Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, after 25 years of marriage, Opie, his wife, was deceitful, maintaining a secret relationship while using him. Despite his sacrifices and devotion, she deceived both him and her other partner. The shock of betrayal intensifies when she is diagnosed with terminal cancer. Learning of Maya's infidelity, her boyfriend also mourns the betrayal. Following his death, he inherits her belongings, viewing them as recompense for his sacrifices. He grapples with the profound betrayal and loss, struggling to move on. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I had been married for 25 years, but in the end, I realized she was using me. I'm sharing this here because it has been a burden in my heart, and hopefully it will clear off after I share it. The first time Maya and I met was on Christmas Eve. I went shopping as usual to grab a few stuff for the celebration the next day, and unexpectedly, the mall I shopped at was out of stock, leaving me with the last pack of the stuff I needed. Story. Maya was already shopping with her younger sister, Kat, and when they realized I had the last box they needed, they were very disappointed. When we were about to make payment at the counter, she kept complaining to the sales representative that her Christmas had just been ruined because of that, and she could not afford to go to the next mall, which was miles away. Finally, when she kept complaining, I was forced to pay for the stuff and hand it to her because of her sweet little sister, and I left the mall. About 3 days later, I met her again at the Christmas party my town organized, and she remembered me immediately. Then we were both very young, and we hung out with each other the whole evening. Shortly after that, we became close friends, hung out with more, and eventually, she became my girlfriend. Maya and I were so much in love and passed through many seasons of our lives together. We dated for 4 years and got married after that. The craziest thing was my family disapproved of Maya. To be precise, my dad didn't like her, and he kept saying there was something about her that he could not place his fingers on. But I loved Maya, and I wasn't going to let anyone separate us from each other. So I got married without my parents' approval, which worsened my relationship with them. Maya's parents, on the other hand, did not have any problem. They blessed our marriage, and from there, we went ahead to rent our own apartment. We started living together as a couple, and I worked hard to make life easier for us. I didn't even go to college. I chose the carpentry career, and with the money I made from it, I had to sponsor Maya to college because I could see how much she wanted to further her education. To be honest, there was nothing that Maya wanted that I didn't give to her, even after several years of being married to each other. We had 2 kids together, and I did my best to provide for my family. When Maya finished college, she got a job, and the pay was good, but I wasn't concerned about her money. I wanted her to be comfortable, so all she had to do was take care of minor bills while I took care of rent and groceries. Then we'd split the children's school fees. I made sure I gave her the dream life she wanted, and I had to make a lot of sacrifices for that to happen. Whenever I could, I'd buy her new stuff, or give her money to go shopping at least once in 3 months. Of course, all our vacations and trips were solely my responsibility, but I didn't mind because she was my wife, and I believed it was my responsibility to treat her right. And in all the 25 years of being married to her, I never cheated on her because I wouldn't tolerate her if she did the same thing to me, so I tried as much as possible to stay away from anything that would lead to infidelity on my side. Despite being married for so long, my parents refused to talk to me, so I never visited them for Christmas, and our kids had only seen pictures of my parents. Because of that, I was forced to embrace Maya's family as my own. For example, when Martha's parents' house needed renovation, I paid heavily for that because I could not leave my work to renovate her parents' house. Martha didn't even contribute a dime because she believed it was my responsibility to do that as her parents' only son-in-law, and I didn't mind doing all of that, too, because they were the only family I had. Everything was going well between us. We were a big happy family until Maya started falling sick. When it didn't stop as expected, we went to the hospital and she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and the doctor said she only had a few months to live. The news hit me like an explosion, and I could not imagine losing Maya after spending all those years with her. My legs were weak, so I managed to sit on one of those long seats in the lobby. While I was still trying to wrap my head around the bad news, I saw a man screaming at the same doctor who spoke to me. At first, I thought he had lost someone because of how heartbroken he looked. But when the doctor came to me to confirm if I was Mr. Wesley, Maya's husband, and introduced the man yelling to be Maya's boyfriend, I felt my head spin. Maya's boyfriend and I stood there for minutes, looking at each other in shock. When I finally calmed down, I asked him how he had met Maya, and he said he had been dating Maya for a very long time, and she led him to believe that she was single and had divorced a very long time ago. He told me about their intimacy, dates, and how they had lunch every day. He even said that he had gotten a ring and was ready to propose to her until he got the news of her sickness. From how he spoke, it was undeniable that he had fallen deeply in love with Maya. I explained to him that Maya and I had been married for 25 years with 2 kids, and I was even planning a surprise renewal of Vav's wedding on her birthday. Evidently, we both had plans for Maya, but she used us and lied to us, even breaking our promise of never cheating on each other. Finally, after crying for a while, Maya's boyfriend told me he was leaving the hospital and would never return because Maya deserved what she got, and that was the last time I saw him. I felt so used, lied to, and backstabbed, and I couldn't help but agree that she deserved what she got. I even sat there for hours, trying to convince myself that I had a bad dream, but it was not a bad dream. It was 100% reality. Finally, when I could put myself together, I picked up my dignity and paid Maya the last visit. I walked to her room door and saw her tubed up and IVs inserted in both hands. I wiped my last tears there in the hallway, in front of her room door, and after I was done, I went in my car and drove off. Months later, her condition worsened as the doctors had predicted, and it got so bad that she got into a coma and depended on life support. Finally, when it looked like she would not get better, I signed that enough was enough and let her go. After she passed away, all of her properties and the things she owned were given to me, and I consider them as my pay for all the sacrifices I made for her. I don't think I'll ever be able to forget her and how she betrayed me. Today's second story. In this story, after 11 years of marriage, OP's trust in his wife shatters when he discovers she's been intimate with her therapist and is pregnant with his child. Despite her pleas, he chooses divorce and presses charges against the therapist. Determined to move on, he leaves her and rebuilds his life, finding strength in the face of betrayal. His ex-wife faces the consequences alone. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I were married for 11 years. I fell in love with my wife because she'd been through heartbreak. I know that sounds surprising, but what she had to go through helped her to mature and understand what it means to be in a serious relationship. Or so I thought. After we were married for 11 years, I trusted her with everything I had, including my heart. I never sought out another woman in all those years because I never felt the need to. My wife and I talked about things, had amazing intimacy, and spent quality time together often. We didn't have kids yet because when I was young I had a vasectomy and pretty much accepted at this point that I wasn't going to bring new children into this world. One day, my wife asked me how I felt about adopting a child. I was surprised but excited that she brought it up. I said we should do it. My wife was ecstatic. This exciting time wasn't meant to last, though over the next few weeks, she didn't mention it again. I was expecting to hear what the next steps were to adopt, but it was like she forgot all about it. Besides that, she seemed embarrassed, like something happened one day that she couldn't tell me. Then she just started making really bad decisions. It was like the smart and sensible woman I married was gone, replaced by a clone with delusional thinking. She was changing her mind, constantly eating fast food for the first time in years and wasting money. Suddenly, she didn't want to go to the grocery store because she felt overwhelmed about what meals to cook for us. I signed her up for therapy with a psychiatrist, fearing she was going through some kind of life crisis. Even though the twice-weekly appointments were expensive, I thought it was necessary for our marriage and as preparation to adopt. I never would have thought that my caring decision to get my wife psychiatric help would lead to what happened. My wife seemed happy and a little more optimistic. After a month of therapy, she was glowing, but her thinking was still pretty scrambled whenever I tried to talk to her like we used to do so well in the past. It never got anywhere. She would just say she didn't know why she felt the way she felt, but the therapist had great suggestions to keep her from getting too overwhelmed. We had intimate, but it was less frequent. I wasn't in the greatest mood when I was at work one day and got a phone call from the state police. The officer advised me to stay calm, that he had some news for me, but of course that only made me more anxious, he said. There was an ongoing investigation concerning my wife's therapist after the initial report. Several more witnesses had come forth with claims against the man for sexual misconduct. He was having intimate with his clients. The officer asked me if I wanted to press charges too, because he found out my wife was one of his clients. I dropped the phone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Fear and heartbreak gripped me. I sped home. I found my wife crying in the bathroom. She showed me a positive pregnancy test and with shaky hands a weak smile, said it must be a miracle. I almost slapped her across the face when she said that. I told her I just spent 11 years and thousands of dollars on her only for her to cheat on me with her psychiatrist. And now she conceived his child. I was screaming at her. She was sobbing, sitting on the edge of the tub, holding her face. She tried to say she was sorry for what happened, but she was fine. Now, if we could move past her infidelity and delusional thinking, we could finally raise a child together. I just stared at her with my jaw dropped. Was she serious? I told her what she just said was a perfect example of delusional thinking and why we were getting a divorce. She yelled like she couldn't believe it. I just casually added that an officer called and told me I could press charges against AP for malpractice and assault. I started furiously packing her bags, knowing that in a few months, none of her clothes would fit. So much for adopting a child together. So much for the past 11 years. I built trust with this girl. I told her all this and she just cried and asked me pointless questions like would I stay with her if she got an abortion? She wasn't really upset until she knew she wouldn't have AP or me to love her anymore. So she was alone and pregnant with a child. She sat on the floor in a zombie-like trance. I called back the officer and told him I wanted to press charges because my wife was pregnant with the therapist. The officer was even shocked and apologized to me. I told him it wasn't me he needed to feel sorry for. I was going to keep moving forward in life and leave her in the dust. He was on speaker when he praised my strength and wisdom. The officer was also cheated on by his ex-wife, but he married a much better woman in no time because he was a high-quality man in demand. He encouraged me to focus my energy on the same and wished me luck. My wife was in the fetal position, looking ashamed. I told her to get in my car. I drove her and her stuff to her parents' house. I no longer saw her as the woman I married. It was strange how suddenly she forced me to learn that anyone is capable of anything at any time. It doesn't matter what's going on. Someone can do something they'll regret for the rest of their life. I refused to forgive her for doing this, even if it was a mistake. I tried to help her, and she betrayed me. She was still sane enough to decide her actions, and we showed up at her parents'. She hadn't even told them what was going on. I had to explain everything, and when I said she was pregnant with this child, they all started sobbing. I left them like that with all my wife's stuff on their dirt driveway. I'm happy to say I followed through with divorce, got to keep my house, and didn't have to pay her alimony or child support. She was kicked out of her parents' house and is raising a baby on her own at the age of 40 while AP continues serving time.